They almost killed your spirit. They laughed at your pain. They believed they were invincible. But right now, the iron prison door is slamming shut behind them. They couldn't take your life, but God, the Creator, can take theirs in an instant. That is the moment the narcissist never imagined would arrive. The same person who mocked your suffering, the same person who tried to crush your identity, the same person who believed they could erase your future, is now standing face to face with consequences. Because narcissists do not simply walk away when they lose control. They escalate. They whisper lies where you cannot defend yourself. They distort the truth until people begin questioning the person you know yourself to be. They try to isolate you. They try to poison your reputation. They try to destroy your life piece by piece so they can stand back and pretend they were the victim all along. And for a moment, it may have looked like their plan was working. The silence became heavy. The betrayal cut deep. The confusion felt overwhelming, and the narcissist watched all of it, believing they had already won. They believed they were untouchable. They believed no one could stop them. They believed they had the power to destroy you and walk away smiling. But arrogance always blinds the narcissist to one terrifying truth. They are not the highest authority in the story, because while they were laughing at your pain, heaven was watching. Every lie, every act of cruelty, every attempt to break a human soul, nothing escaped the eyes of God. And when someone crosses the line from manipulation into destruction, they step into consequences they cannot control. The narcissist thought they were writing the end of your story, but they forgot something that changes everything. The story never belonged to them. They thought they were untouchable, but heaven was recording everything. The most dangerous moment in the life of a narcissist is not when they begin hurting people. It is the moment they become convinced they will never face consequences. Because once a person believes they are untouchable, their behavior changes. Restraint disappears. Their arrogance grows louder. Their cruelty becomes bolder. And that is exactly what happens when narcissists believe they have successfully broken someone. They begin to move through life with a terrifying confidence. They laugh at the damage they caused. They dismiss the tears they created. They mock the pain they inflicted as if it were nothing more than weakness. In their mind, your suffering becomes proof of their superiority. And the more they see you struggling to recover from the wounds they created, the more powerful they feel. This is why narcissists often appear so calm after destroying someone's life. They believe the story is over. They believe the evidence is gone. They believe the person they tried to erase will eventually disappear quietly from the world. But arrogance has always carried a fatal blindness. Because the narcissist thinks they are the one controlling the narrative. They believe that if they manipulate enough people, if they twist enough conversations, if they repeat the same lie enough times, they can rewrite reality itself. And sometimes, for a season, it looks like they succeed. People believe them. People repeat their accusations. People distance themselves from the very person who was wronged. And the narcissist watches this unfold with quiet satisfaction. They see relationships breaking. They see reputations shaking. They see confusion spreading. And they begin to feel something deeply dangerous. Invincible. That word begins whispering inside their mind. No one can stop me. No one can expose me. No one can prove what I've done. But what narcissists never understand is that human perception is not the final court of justice. People can be deceived. Crowds can be manipulated. Stories can be twisted. But truth does not disappear simply because someone hides it well. Truth waits. Truth observes. Truth records. And there is a witness that no narcissist can silence. God sees what happens in secret. Every whisper spoken behind closed doors. Every lie crafted in private conversations. Every moment when cruelty was chosen deliberately, the narcissist may convince the world of their innocence. But heaven is not confused. Heaven is not deceived. Heaven is not manipulated. While the narcissist was busy building their false story, another record was being written, not by angry victims, not by suspicious observers, but by the God who sees every hidden act, every time they laughed at your pain, every time they distorted the truth about you, every time they attempted to destroy the life of someone who trusted them. Nothing vanished, nothing disappeared, nothing escaped the record. And that is the moment the narcissist never prepares for, because the person who believes they are untouchable will eventually collide with the reality that they were being watched the entire time. They thought they were writing the story. They thought they were directing the outcome. They thought they had already buried the truth beneath layers of deception. But the truth was never buried. It was being documented. And when arrogance convinces a person they can harm others without consequence, they unknowingly move closer to the moment when those consequences finally appear. The narcissist believed the story ended when they broke your heart, when they poisoned your reputation, when they convinced others to doubt you. But that was not the end. That was the beginning of the record against them. Because when a person repeatedly chooses cruelty, manipulation, and destruction over humility and truth, they begin building something they never intended to build, the evidence of their own downfall. And when that moment finally arrives, the narcissist discovers something that terrifies them more than exposure. They discover they were never untouchable. They were simply being given time. Your survival became the evidence against them. They believed the story would end with your collapse. They believed that after the lies, the betrayal, the humiliation, and the emotional warfare they unleashed against you, you would slowly disappear. They thought the damage they caused would silence you. They thought the pain they created would erase you. That was always their strategy. Because narcissists do not simply want to hurt someone they cannot control. They want that person erased from the story. They want the world to forget you. They want the memory of you to fade until the only version that remains is the distorted one they created. That is why they attack reputation. That is why they poison relationships. That is why they attempt to break your confidence. If they can destroy your voice, they believe they can rewrite reality. But something happened that they never planned for. You survived. You stood up again when they thought you would stay down. You kept breathing when the weight of betrayal felt unbearable. You continued moving forward when everything around you seemed to collapse. And that single fact changed everything, because the narcissist's entire strategy depended on your disappearance. But instead of disappearing, you remained. Every day you continued living became a quiet testimony against them. Every step you took toward healing exposed the cruelty they tried to hide. Every moment you refused to surrender your faith revealed the truth they worked so hard to bury. Your survival became evidence. Evidence that the story they told about you was never true. Evidence that the strength they mocked was real. Evidence that the person they tried to destroy was never the problem. This is the moment narcissists fear the most. Not confrontation, not arguments. They fear endurance. Because endurance exposes everything. The person who was supposed to collapse is still standing. The person who was supposed to disappear is still present. The person who was supposed to be broken is still rebuilding. And with every passing day, the narrative they carefully constructed begins to crumble. People begin noticing something. The person the narcissist described as weak is still standing. The person they labeled unstable is still moving forward. The person they tried to isolate continues finding strength, and slowly the truth begins to surface. The real story was never the one they told. The real story is the one your life is still writing. Because survival carries a power that manipulation cannot control. A lie can travel quickly, but endurance travels further. When a person continues walking after betrayal, continues believing after humiliation, continues rebuilding after sabotage, something extraordinary happens. The truth becomes visible without a single word being spoken, and the narcissist begins to feel something they have avoided their entire life: fear, because the person they tried to erase has become the living proof of their deception. You were supposed to vanish. Instead, you became the evidence. You were supposed to be silent. Instead, your life speaks louder than every lie they told. And that is the moment the narcissist realizes the story is no longer under their control. The truth is walking in plain sight, and the person they tried to destroy is still standing. If you are still here, if you are still breathing, if you are still rebuilding your life after everything they tried to do to you, then your existence itself is already proof that their plan failed. And sometimes the most powerful response to someone who tried to destroy you is not revenge. It is survival. It is endurance. It is the quiet strength of a life that refused to disappear. Before we continue, I want to ask you something simple. If you are one of the people who survived a narcissist who tried to break your spirit, write 2 numbers in the comments that mean the most to you right now: a promise, a prayer, or simply a reminder that you are still here, because every number carries a story, and every survivor carries a testimony the narcissist could never erase. Human justice may delay, but divine justice moves in a moment. One of the most painful questions survivors carry after narcissistic abuse is this: how did they get away with it? How could someone cause so much damage, speak so many lies, destroy so many relationships, and still appear to walk freely through life as if nothing happened? For a while, it can look that way. The narcissist continues smiling in public. They continue telling their version of the story. They continue pretending that the destruction they created never existed. And for the person they wounded, the silence can feel unbearable, because human justice often moves slowly. Truth takes time to surface. Evidence takes time to be recognized. People need time to see patterns that manipulation tried to hide. And during that waiting period, it can feel like the narcissist has escaped everything. But there is something important that arrogant people never understand. Delay is not the same as escape. What looks like silence is often preparation. What looks like freedom is often temporary, because divine justice does not operate on panic. It operates on precision. When the moment finally arrives, it does not unfold slowly. It unfolds suddenly. History is filled with moments when a person who believed they were untouchable suddenly faced consequences they never imagined. A lie collapses, a secret surfaces, a witness speaks, a hidden pattern becomes visible, and the same person who once appeared powerful suddenly finds themselves standing in a place they never thought they would see. Exposure. This is the moment narcissists fear more than anything else, because their entire identity depends on control. Control of perception, control of narrative, control of reputation. But once truth breaks through that illusion, control disappears, and the collapse can happen faster than anyone expects. The narcissist who once mocked your pain suddenly realizes something terrifying. They are no longer directing the story. The same lies they used to hurt you become the evidence that exposes them. The same arrogance that once made them fearless now makes them reckless. The same manipulation that once protected them now traps them. And when that moment arrives, everything changes. Because when truth rises to the surface, it does not ask permission. It does not negotiate. It does not wait for approval. It simply reveals what has always been there. The narcissist believed time was protecting them, but time was only revealing them. They believed silence meant victory, but silence was allowing the truth to gather strength. They believed the story ended when they hurt you, but the real story was only beginning. And when divine justice finally moves, it does not arrive as chaos. It arrives as clarity. The truth becomes undeniable. The lies become visible. The damage becomes impossible to ignore. And the same person who once believed they had buried the truth forever is suddenly standing in the light of it. That is the moment when arrogance collapses, because the narcissist finally realizes something they never considered before. They were never escaping justice. They were simply walking toward the moment when it would finally arrive. They couldn't destroy you. The narcissist believed something with absolute confidence. They believed your life was within their reach to destroy. They believed that if they applied enough pressure, if they spread enough lies, if they manipulated enough people, eventually you would collapse. That was always their assumption. Because narcissists see people as pieces on a board, they believe they can move situations. They believe they can manipulate outcomes. They believe they can engineer someone else's downfall if they push hard enough. And for a while, it may have looked like they were succeeding. The rumors spread. The relationships fractured. The stress weighed heavily on your mind. There were nights when the betrayal replayed itself again and again in your thoughts. Moments when you wondered how someone could look you in the eyes, speak kindness, and then quietly begin dismantling your life behind your back. That kind of betrayal cuts deeper than most people understand, because it is not simply opposition, it is intentional destruction. The narcissist wanted your life to collapse. They wanted your confidence to vanish. They wanted your reputation to crumble. They wanted to watch your world slowly fall apart so they could stand at a distance and claim innocence. But there was something happening that they could not see, something they could not control. Protection, not the kind of protection that prevents every wound, not the kind of protection that eliminates every struggle, but the kind that ensures destruction never reaches its final goal. Because the narcissist's plan depended on one outcome: your disappearance. They needed you to break completely. They needed you to vanish quietly from the story. They needed you to become so exhausted, so defeated, and so ashamed that you would never stand again. But that outcome never arrived. You were wounded. You were shaken. You were forced to face a level of betrayal that few people ever expect. But you were not erased. You were not destroyed. You were not finished. And that is the part the narcissist cannot understand, because in their mind, their strategy should have worked. They have used similar tactics before. They have manipulated people before. They have broken people before. So when their attempts against you began failing, something started unsettling them. The more they tried to crush you, the more you continued standing. The more they tried to isolate you, the more truth began slowly revealing itself. The more they attempted to bury your reputation, the more their own behavior began attracting attention. That is when the narcissist begins sensing something they cannot explain, from something greater than you. Because when a person attempts to destroy a life that God refuses to surrender, every plan begins to weaken. Every scheme begins to unravel. Every lie eventually collides with reality. The narcissist thought they were fighting a person. They believed the battle was simply between two individuals. But what they never recognized was that the moment they crossed from manipulation into deliberate destruction, the battle changed. They were no longer opposing just a human being. They were opposing the will of God over that life. And that is a battle arrogance can never win. Because God does not need chaos to defeat evil. He simply allows truth to stand long enough. The narcissist believed they had the power to decide your ending. But the ending was never theirs to write. They tried to destroy your future, but God refused to sign their plan. They tried to erase your life, but heaven never approved the attempt. And now the person who believed they controlled everything must face a truth they never imagined. The life they tried to destroy was never theirs to destroy. And the same God who allowed you to survive the attack is the same God who will determine what happens next. The collapse begins where the mask can no longer survive, because the narcissist's greatest weapon is never strength. It is appearance, the appearance of confidence, the appearance of innocence, the appearance of superiority. They survive by controlling how others see them. As long as the image remains intact, they believe they are safe. They can destroy reputations. They can twist stories. They can rewrite events, and still walk through life with admiration and influence. But that entire structure depends on one fragile condition. People must continue believing the image. The moment that belief begins to crack, everything changes. At first, it happens quietly. A person begins noticing inconsistencies. Another person remembers a conversation that does not match the narcissist's story. Someone else begins recognizing the same pattern of manipulation, repeated again and again. And suddenly, the image that once looked flawless begins showing fractures. The narcissist senses this shift immediately. They feel the atmosphere changing. The admiration becomes cautious. The unquestioned trust becomes silent observation. The people who once defended them begin asking quiet questions. And this is the moment panic begins rising inside the narcissist. Because once doubt enters the room, control starts slipping away. They try to recover the image. They speak louder. They repeat their accusations with more intensity. They attempt to discredit anyone who begins seeing the truth. But desperation has a strange effect. It reveals the very behavior they were trying to hide. The anger becomes visible. The arrogance becomes obvious. The manipulation becomes undeniable. And people begin recognizing something that once remained hidden. Because narcissists rarely harm only one person. There are always others. Other relationships damaged. Other reputations distorted. Other lives quietly wounded by the same tactics. And when the mask begins to fall, those patterns start connecting. The narcissist who once controlled the narrative suddenly faces something they cannot manipulate. Recognition. People begin seeing them clearly. Not the charming version they presented, not the victim they pretended to be, but the pattern of behavior that followed them everywhere. And the moment that recognition spreads, the collapse accelerates. The admiration that once protected them disappears. The narcissist is left standing without the one thing they depended on more than anything else: the illusion. Without the illusion, the arrogance has nothing to hide behind. Without the illusion, their behavior finally appears exactly as it is. And this is the part that terrifies them the most. Because the person who once believed they controlled how everyone saw them suddenly realizes something impossible to reverse. The mask is gone. The image is broken, and the truth is now visible in ways they can no longer control. For the narcissist, this moment feels like the ground beneath them has vanished, because everything they built their identity upon depended on admiration and belief. Now both are disappearing, and when the mask collapses, something else begins to happen. Silence. The silence of people who no longer defend them. The silence of observers who have finally recognized the pattern. The silence that replaces the applause they once lived for. That silence is not empty. It is the sound of the narcissist's world beginning to close in around them. Because once the mask falls, the collapse is no longer avoidable. It is only a matter of time before the consequences follow. When the narcissist finally faces a world they cannot control, a world where their manipulation has no power, a place where charm cannot rescue them, a moment when no amount of twisting the truth, can reverse what has already been set in motion. Because narcissists survive by controlling environments. They control conversations. They control narratives. They control how people see them. As long as they remain inside spaces where influence matters, they feel safe. They can persuade. They can intimidate. They can confuse people until no one is sure what really happened. But there are moments in life when a person suddenly enters territory where influence disappears, where stories no longer matter, where the evidence stands on its own. And when narcissists arrive in that environment, something extraordinary happens. Their entire strategy collapses, because the tools they relied on for years suddenly stop working. The confident voice that once persuaded people carries no authority. The performance that once impressed audiences has no effect. The accusations that once redirected blame are no longer believed. And for the first time, the narcissist is forced into a situation they never prepared for. They must face reality without control. This is why the moment consequences begin closing in feels so overwhelming to them. They are no longer directing the story. They are no longer the narrator. They are simply another person standing in front of the truth. And truth is something narcissists cannot negotiate with. Truth does not respond to intimidation. Truth does not disappear when someone becomes angry. Truth does not retreat when someone refuses to accept it. It stands, it waits, and eventually it becomes impossible to ignore. For someone who spent years rewriting reality, this experience is deeply destabilizing, because every instinct inside them searches for a way out. They look for someone to manipulate, someone to convince, someone to blame. But suddenly those doors are closed, and the realization begins sinking in. The situation has moved beyond their control. The same person who once believed they could dismantle another human being's life now stands in a place where their own choices are being examined. Every moment when they chose cruelty instead of integrity. And the narcissist finally understands something that once seemed impossible. Power has limits. Arrogance has consequences. Manipulation eventually runs out of room to operate. Because there are moments in life when truth becomes stronger than influence. Moments when reality refuses to bend. Moments when the story a narcissist created no longer protects them. This is the point where fear replaces arrogance. The person who once laughed at your suffering now feels the pressure of something they cannot escape. The structure they built around themselves is collapsing. The protection they believed would last forever is disappearing. And the person who once believed they could destroy anyone they chose must now confront the truth of their own actions. Not in the shadows where they controlled the narrative, but in a place where the truth stands on its own. And when that moment finally arrives, the narcissist faces something more terrifying than exposure. They face accountability, a reality where the life they tried to ruin is no longer under attack, and the consequences of their own choices are no longer avoidable. The narcissist believed they were writing the ending of your life. They believed the lies would define you. They believed the betrayal would break you. They believed the pain they caused would follow you forever. But that story was never theirs to control. Because the greatest victory is not watching the narcissist fall. The greatest victory is realizing that their power over you has ended. The same person who tried to silence you no longer defines your voice. The same person who tried to poison your reputation no longer controls your name. The same person who tried to break your spirit no longer holds authority over your life. What once felt like devastation has revealed something far greater. Strength you did not know you possessed. Clarity you did not have before. Faith that survived the darkest moments. And that is something narcissists can never understand. Because the very pain they tried to use to destroy you became the fire that refined you. You learned to see manipulation clearly. You learned to protect your peace. You learned that the approval of people who operate through deception was never something worth chasing. And once that realization arrives, something powerful happens. Freedom. Freedom from their accusations. Freedom from their manipulation. Freedom from the emotional chains they once wrapped around your life. Justice will come in the way and time it is meant to come. But your life no longer needs to revolve around the narcissist's downfall. Your life moves forward. Your healing deepens. Your peace grows stronger with every step away from the chaos they created. Because the truth that matters most is simple. They could not take your life. They could not erase your purpose. And the life they tried to destroy is the very life that will continue rising, rebuilding, and moving forward long after their influence has disappeared.